Great gathering. Welcome, welcome. It's January 7th. This is Cindy Krupp's I Am an Open Door spiritual site, for which we are all grateful. It's Tuesday, as I said, January 7th. Whether you're joining us live or later, listening later, we welcome you and are grateful for this opportunity to gather. This is the gathering centered around Training Wheels, which is a book that I wrote in 2019 on the daily lessons of A Course in Miracles. We're on lesson 16. I understand we repeated lesson 15 twice. Maybe we just really needed to have that. This is going to be a good lesson. I think we'll probably have lots of discussion around it. Sometimes the simplest lessons are the deepest ones. And I often find myself going back to the first 10 lessons just because they're so profound. They're just so profound. So let's just take our seats. What we're going to do today is I'm going to read the commentary, and then we're just going to practice with this lesson, and I'll time us for probably at least 10 minutes. And we'll just do a meditation on the lesson, and then we'll come back together and have a conversation about it. So I'm going to turn my camera off so I don't focus on anything else other than the words, and we will begin. Settle in. Like yourself, search for any places in the body that are tense and gently breathe into them. Let them go on the out breath. Relax your tummy. Soften your heart. I have no neutral thoughts. I have no neutral thoughts. Nothing I see means anything. I have given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. I do not understand anything I see. These thoughts do not mean anything. I am never upset for the reasons I think. I am upset because I see something that is not there. I see only the past. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. I see nothing as it is now. My thoughts do not mean anything, and my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. God did not create a meaningless world. My thoughts are images I have made. I have no neutral thoughts. Have you ever heard the saying, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride? I remember feeling great disappointment when I first heard my mother repeat this old adage. It took a bit of life out of me, and it wasn't exactly right either. Thoughts are things. American mystic Edgar Cayce said, thoughts are things. And Jim Self tells us, thoughts are electric and feelings are magnetic. We may not be able to conjure a horse out of thin air, but thoughts and feelings have a force that has been clearly documented. Stressful thoughts affect the heart, the stomach, the nervous system, and the brain. Thoughts of peace and loving kindness lower the body's production of stress hormones. When I invite us to soften the heart, soften the belly, soften the solar plexus, just the thought of doing that is felt in the body without moving, without touching anything. We have ignored the power of thought because we cannot see or measure it. It doesn't fit into the realm of material physics. This is a difficult concept for most people to really understand. I have no neutral thoughts. For now, we are asked only to accept that thoughts have effects and that all thoughts contain an energetic component. Yesterday, or last week, we practiced with the idea that thoughts are images we make. Today, we consider that we have no neutral thoughts. In other words, nearly every thought we have is qualified in some way. No thought that arises in the mind is without some form of judgment. A Course in Miracles tells us, every thought you have contributes to truth or illusion. Either it extends truth or it multiplies illusions. You can multiply nothing, which is what illusions are, but you cannot extend it by doing so. Only love is extended. Today's lesson should be practiced 4 or 5 times. Take your seat, close your eyes, and take 3 or 4 deep cleansing breaths. Relax your shoulders, relax the space between your eyes, relax your tummy and your heart. And now in your mind, say to yourself, I have no neutral thoughts. And then sit quietly with closed eyes and allow thoughts to arise naturally. Notice that the thought arises by itself. As each thought arises, hold it softly in your mind and say to yourself, this thought about whatever has arisen is not a neutral thought. Allow whatever arises to be as it is, no matter what the content is, large or small. As Eckhart Tolle says, there are no small upsets. Every upset is a resistance to what is. Let's take 10 minutes now and practice this, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So relax. I'll time us and enjoy. One of the reasons we don't see clearly that thoughts have effects is because of linear time. Quantum physics tells us that all time exists now. But for those of us who seem stuck in linear time, we don't always recognize the link between a thought and its manifestation. And to further complicate things, we are so regularly unaware of our thoughts that we miss the obvious connections. And yet we've all experienced synchronicity, which is a mystical connection between a thought and an event. Please do not underestimate the power of this lesson. It is truly revolutionary. We are being asked to grow up and take responsibility for our thoughts. Every thought contributes to truth or illusion. Every thought either extends peace or war, love or fear. A neutral effect is impossible because neutral thought is impossible. To know this is the beginning of awakening from the dream. Come on back. A Course in Miracles tells us our thoughts keep the dream of fear alive in the mind. There are no neutral thoughts in the dream because there are only two possibilities to this reality, love or fear. Allowing or resisting. And there's no little or small resistance. Resistance just is, or it isn't. What is a thought? What exactly is a thought? A thought is a form of separation because we really only think in the dream. Beyond the dream, we know. Thoughts are energetic forms of separation. A Course in Miracles, or actually the glossary, describes thoughts of God. It defines thoughts of God. And this is how Kenneth Wapnick defines the thought of God. It's the non-spatial, in other words, not 3D, not the dream, non-spatial extension of God's mind or spirit. It includes all of creation, our true self, big S self, as well as our creations, being part of God. God's thoughts share God's attributes, unified, eternal, formless, creative, and changeless. That's a thought of God. How did that meditation go for you? I'm going to open it up here. What do you think a thought is? What is your experience of thought? How do you feel when you hear there are no neutral thoughts? For me, when I first started this lesson, I felt very almost hyper attuned to my thoughts because I realized I can only have thoughts that are either true or not true. And so every thought that came to my mind, I looked at. And that works for a while, but you can't live your life that way. So what I began to discover was not the only, one of the best and truest thoughts that I can have in this body, in this experience, is the thought of forgiveness. Because the thought of forgiveness frees the dream. It frees us from the dream. It opens the door to true perception. Right. Mel,
Hi. So this,
hi, good to see you.
it's no, so I can't, so it's great. This is actually a great opportunity because it lets me be here. Put in. But I thoughts have always felt to me like waves, passing through. But some we hold on to and some we let go, just kind of get, but the ones we grasp is the ones that keep us in the dream, it seems. Um, and you get stuck and keep recycling through sometimes. And I don't know, it is definitely an interest, but then I also question, well, who is it that has thoughts, right? I mean, they're only just passing through, energy passing through, and if there's no you there, then they don't have any power, or they're, as you say, but you say they're not neutral. So I get confused about that because if you don't hold on to them, then yeah, you see what I'm saying? I'm going around, but
I do. I get you. I get what you're saying. This is where the non-dual teaching really interfaces with A Course in Miracles.
mm,
And so I would ask you, Mel, how do you think this interface works? Because you're familiar with both.
yeah. Well, I think it's the point of the if there's no one there and they're just passing through, it's staying aware of being in the awareness that you are. And that's what frees you up from getting pulled into the dream. And as we know, within the dream, some of these thoughts are useful, of course. Some we need to be able to function. So it's, yeah, trying to stay aware, being aware that it's all consciousness happening.
I think that's a great answer.
Oh,
It is maybe the one true thought we can have is I am. I am this awareness. And of course tells us that
yeah.
all the time. It doesn't say it in the non-dual teaching language, but it's basically what it says. And when this lesson says, every thought you have contributes to truth or illusion, the I am thought is probably the truest thought.
Mm.
I am. Right? That's the last thought before no thought. And it says also you can multiply nothing, but you can't extend it. So one of the things we've gone over is the difference between making and extending. So thoughts are made, they aren't extended. Only God's thought is extended. Creative. It's what Ken Wapnick, it's how he described the thought of God that I just read. Right? So fear can make another fear thought, but it doesn't make it true. Right? Cindy, thank you for raising your hand.
Well, I come with questions. I thought there was only one, but now there's two. Within what we're discussing here, how do you relate what you're calling thinking or thought to the use of vocabulary or words? That's part A. Part B is how do you distinguish thinking in the different ways we're talking about it with believing?
Let's do the second one first. How would I distinguish thinking from believing? I would put them in the same camp because knowing is true, believing is not. Not necessarily. Believing and thinking are synonymous in my response to you. Your first question, I think, centers around Paul Selig's I am word. I could be wrong about that. So let me ask you to ask that question again.
Well, it's interesting because so I love like you're answering the second question. Um, what happens to the guides in Paul Selig is what you taught. Um, the little self thinks, the true self knows. That's a statement that comes from the guides, which is what I heard you state. Um, the question about words is actually a little bit different. Um, and it's honestly, it came out of my contemplations even this morning. There's this sense that God's thought does not need to create form, and words, once they're spoken or written, are form. So, in many ways, Selig defines the word as the creative for the creative function and action, or the divine in action. And so it creates form and all that other stuff. But I'm really within this statement that my thoughts are never neutral. Um, I'm wondering, and it's an honest, like I don't have the answer here at all. Um, can I flow back before the creation of words in the divine thinking so that the words, once they're created, have a more God-centered focus? Does that make like that's where I am? So that's where the questions are coming from.
That makes absolutely perfect sense. I think, especially if we remember that words are pointers, right? They're just pointers, but they can also be powerful pointers, right? Because words have a vibratory quality. And so the vibration, which is the vibration of a word is a very weak extension of knowing, but it still can be, right?
Well, the other piece that's coming up in this conversation here for me is remembering Rupert Spira's teaching of the I am as a the way it's showing up here. So I don't remember exactly what Rupert said, but I love especially with this being an open door, I see the I am now as a portal or an open door with an opening on either end. So within this sort of tunnel, the I am tunnel, there's the movement in both directions, right? With the words sort of either um, flowing into the creation of duality or the form-based world. But when we're in the form-based world, we can also use wording to go back into the tunnel and let go of the words back into the formless.
That would be what Edgar Casey said. I know we have some comments in the chat, which I do want to get to, but that's what Edgar Casey would say. He said, why meditate on nothing? Why not meditate on holiness, on positive thoughts? So
That's also the golden key, right? Matthew Fox, the golden key says, you know, to focus on the word of God, you know, to
yes,
find those. You know, for the record, Melanie's hand went up and down, and so I just wanted to point that out. I was not listening,
okay.
so I'll mute myself.
I was just going to add about the word. I remember, I think it was Angela Delulu said that all thoughts are have to be put in. If you can put it into words, it's a thought. A thought is expressed in words, and words are naturally dualistic. So that's where you can distinguish, a thought is always dualistic because our language is dualistic. So that's why what you were saying, Cindy, was interesting because you need to get before, when you step back before the thought, that takes you out of that perspective.
Mhm.
You see, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to ask us, I'm going to call on Richard here, but I'd like us to just ponder for a second. When we go into meditation, I want to ask how many of you have used a word or a phrase to begin a meditation that has then taken you just beyond that word or phrase into not thinking? So yeah, so we all have had that experience. Richard, good morning. You got to unmute. Okay, there you go.
I hope I didn't miss it too much. I got here a little late, but what has helped me was on this issue Cindy asked about was the three states as taught by Advaita Vedanta. In the first state, there is deep sleep. In the deep sleep state, the separate self does not exist. There only is this. The next state is the dream state. And this is when thoughts arise in the mind. And then the third state is the awakened state, and that's the manifestation of the words that arose in the second state. So for me, thinking, thoughts are, for example, today, I had an issue earlier, and I went to that deep stillness place and asked for guidance, but I invited into stillness. And a thought came into my mind, and it was in the form of words. The thought was a combination of words. And I went, oh, thank you. But this was my guidance from my right mind, not the ego mind. So that seems to work for me right now. That's how I differentiate thoughts from the right mind versus the wrong mind. I love you all.
Love you too, Richard. I want to ask another question. Have any of you ever had the experience? This is actually a good question for Richard. This is a tag along to your comment. Have you ever had an experience of a dream and then realized when you really thought about the dream that it was coming from a place where words do not exist. And the dream was giving you information using words, but the words were almost it was almost comical how the words sought analogies, sought to bridge the wordless dream state with a word in an analogy of a dream. And let me see if I'm going to see if I can find an example. This is not a great example, but so you dream of vulnerability. Your dream is about vulnerability and being vulnerable in whatever state. But what you dream of is kittens, right? So you dream of little teeny kittens. And those kittens are so innocent and so vulnerable. And yet you know that they are going to grow up and be big and strong and have claws and be able to take care of themselves. And so what the dream is telling you is right now you feel vulnerable, but it's reminding you that you're actually big and strong. And when that insight comes and you realize that what your dream sent you was the image of a kitten, you realize the distance between that the self in the dream state that's trying to communicate with the one in the waking state, and it's having to use words or images that are it's really just grasping for them because it can't make that direct connection. You see what I'm saying? And so the state that Richard's talking about, which is the state of no thought, is constantly, and in the Course, this is the unconscious mind. This is the vast unconscious that contains our big S self and all the information that the egoic mind tries to keep down. It doesn't want us to see this unconscious connection because it's too threatening to the ego. Right? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but this is partly, I think, why when Jenny Beal leads meditations, and I saw your hand, Richard, the meditation is to just sink in, just sink below, down into complete relaxation, but aware relaxation, and just allow whatever arises to arise, and just be the gentle witness to whatever arises. This, I think, is how we allow the unconscious mind to have access to conscious awareness and to allow that richness. It's like the deep, rich, cold water that has sunk to the bottom but contains all the nutrients in the ocean to rise up to the top and feed the conscious mind. I may not be making any sense here. I hope I am, but I'm trying.
Where you at? Did you want me to respond to that?
Absolutely, Richard. And then,
For a number of years of my experience as a separate self, I didn't dream. At least I didn't remember my dreams. But then I read some things about dreaming and both the positive effect and negative effect dreams can have on your life. And that was before the Course in Miracles. So I started having dreams when I stopped drinking, and then I started analyzing the dreams. What did the dream mean? What was the guidance? I found out after studying the Course for a while I was letting the ego analyze my dream. So I said, I'm going to stop doing that. I don't trust dreams anymore. I trust my direct experience with being in the stillness and allowing thoughts to arise in my mind. That I trust more than I trust my dreams. So, although I'm sure that people get a lot of positive guidance from analyzing their dreams. I just don't practice that anymore.
Thank you for
Okay.
that. Thank you for that. I would add something to that, and I agree that analyzing your dreams can be misleading, but I also think like that dreams can come from a deeper place, a more awakened place. And so it's a fine line. It's a fine line. Cindy, would you let David go?
However, they haven't advanced to a point where I can do that. So I'm not doing any of the dream thing right now. So when I get there, maybe I will.
All right, well, you can share with us when you do. Cindy, can we let David go first because he hasn't spoken yet? David.
I know that's really an anomaly for me not to have spoken yet, but sometimes it happens. But I was going to say something earlier, but then I read what Kendall posted, and I go, "That's what I wanted to say." So I mean, she did it much better. But a couple of things. The communications is, I write things all the time, and what I'm maybe realizing, or what I'm thinking about now is I'm trying to bypass my inability to communicate non-verbally, because to me that's the ultimate communicator. If I can go up someone and just look at them and smile, or touch them on the shoulder, I have more communications in that interaction than anything I'd ever written. And it's just so amazing that that just came to me. But I mean, I've noticed that when I do those kind of things, that that feels really good, or that's because that just happened today in my morning meeting, and I just touched somebody, and it's just like I mean, I can be so aware of that connection. And then the other thing about it, when Richard was talking about dreams, I have awful dreams. Even though I retired from work about 15 years ago, 15 years ago, I have these horrible work dreams where I go to do a job and I can't figure out how to do the job, and I can't make it work, and so forth and so on. But then I was reading the ego was the person who wrote these dreams, and they're the ones that directed it, and now they're critiquing it, and I'm sitting here buying all that crap. It's like rather than it's almost like when I'm having the dreams, I've learned how to escape from my dreams. I need to wake up. This is awful. I can't deal with this. And sometimes I'll do that and go back and have the same repetitive situation time after time, and then sometimes I get up. But I just realized now I can ask myself, is this true? Is this something that is true? Is this who I am? Is this something I believe? Rather than to try to escape from this dream, why can't I challenge it and say, wait, what the hell? This isn't who I am. Maybe this is who my ego wants me to think is who I am, but it's not who I am. I'm a perfect son of God, or a child of God, and I don't have to work. I don't have to take this crap from my ego anymore. So I'm just going to see the next time I have a dream, which will probably be tonight. I'm going to try that on for size and see how that works. So thank you all for listening to all my rants and raves. But I started late, but I finished strong.
Thank you, David. And you remind us. Rupert Spira uses dreams as a teaching tool, right? His teaching that this is a dream, and the King Lear dream And the Mary dream on the streets of Paris or London is a very, very good teaching tool. So dreams are not useless. They are capable of great wisdom. Not always, as you said, David, eloquently. They are tools of the ego just as often.
Yeah. And so I can look at those dreams and say, what is this teaching? What is this trying to tell me? And maybe what it's trying to tell me is, I have the power to change my mind and choose not to buy into these dreams. So the lesson is, do what I have the power to do. If I don't think this is the right thing, if I don't believe this is true, then disregard it.
Mhm. 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 Thank you. Cindy, and then I'll read the comments from the chat.
I raised my hand when Richard was sharing, not the last time, but the time before. There was something that I learned from Regina that I've always found very, very helpful relative to communicating with that part of ourselves before words. Let's put it that way. And she stated that that communication is always available, which I lit up while Richard was talking. And what happens when we ask for help from that part of ourselves before words is the help always comes. It flows through our conditioned self, and it finds a way to communicate to the little self, the dream character, whatever you want, in a way that can be heard.
You said that
So,
way better than I did. Thank you.
yeah, what I love was just this. Regina's wonderful in the fact that she was a military officer, designed, Richard like that, right? So when Regina was in the military, her expertise was creating training programs for adults. How do adults learn? And she was creating these huge training programs. And then she went from there into corporate America, and she was creating training programs for a corporation that the programs needed to be taught to thousands of people within the corporation. She takes that skill now into the teaching of these spiritual principles, and she finds ways to chunk them down so adults can be with them, which is why the Four Principles of God probably is a very useful map. But this, for me, was very useful. This idea that we're always immersed in this, the truth of who we are, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And when we get still enough to ask for help from that place, the help always comes, but it has to go through our conditioning and find a way to communicate with us. And from that point, something else I learned from Regina is, what do I have faith in? So I know that the truth of who I am loves me, and I am divinely loved, and that there is this whole forgiveness and everything else we know. So I can then interpret what's coming supposedly from a higher self. And if it is not judgmental, and if it doesn't, attack another, and if it doesn't make me feel guilty or shameful, then there's a usefulness in the solution, right? But if it makes me feel shameful or guilty or small or the need to defend myself, then I can, regardless of how it feels, assume that my ego conditioned self has polluted the information that's coming from the higher self, and I can go back to the stillness and try again. Anyway, that's a big part of what happens here. So that's what I wanted to share. And somebody should read Kendall and Michelle. I think you said you were going to do that. So
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. So Kendall said, believing may be a compilation of thoughts. So a belief may be a group of thoughts that form a belief system. And Michelle said, agreed, Kendall, This brings to mind the process of questioning beliefs and thoughts. And then Kendall said, what comes to mind is the communication of nature, animals, plants, etc. They are utilizing the sound current. There is the biological need to communicate. And then Michelle says, dreams are awesome that way, sending us beautiful and helpful messages from the higher self, spirit, although it does take some self-awareness and listening to decode sometimes. What Cindy just said, I think, is always what we can come back to, which is, how does the thought make me feel, right? If it's a thought that is extending love, that is peace, that reminds me I am infinite, eternal, pure, then it's a thought I can probably know is true. But if there's fear or self-doubt or denigration in it, then I know that the ego has hijacked the message. Michelle, come on down.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, I know there are just a few minutes left, but I just wanted to share that Cindy's share just I had a little light bulb go off here or on. I dream all the time, and they're really lovely. I'm not all the time, but pretty. I mean, 90% of the time. And it just occurred to me that during the day, during my waking hours, I get in the way of myself quite a bit. So I'm like, maybe maybe I'm getting some extra assistance, when I'm not resisting, when I'm in deep sleep, because they're very, very, very clear, and as you described with the kittens, they're oftentimes very comical and seem to not make sense. And then as I percolate, or as quote unquote time goes on, I realize what I'm being taught. So I'm grateful for that gift. Anyway,
I am too. I have the exact same experience, Michelle. Same experience. Yeah. Dreams are really powerful for me. They are one of the gifts that I have.
I consider it a gift too. I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for that. And you're right. They do percolate up during the day. So you could be doing something completely unrelated to anything in the dream, but all of a sudden into your awareness comes a link between the dream and some information download that just comes through. Right. My dreaming life is part of what really let me know that Rupert Spira was 100% correct, that this is a dream world. I think that's true for all of us. Indigo, do you want to come to the head of the table? Thank you for being here. It's good to see you.
You too. Hi, how are you?
So you want me to
I'm
come back?
good.
Like 5 minutes?
Maybe, okay, that after lunch.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had someone at the door. I just want to say I'm so grateful for this teaching and just everything. I have just never been so happy and just completely just blown away. Really, I'm just speechless. How God just takes care of everything and guides me in everything. And I don't understand it, and it's okay. I don't care. I know I'm so loved, and taken care of. And that whatever happens, it's perfect. And yeah, so I just I'm just so grateful for all these teachings and this community and everything. So that's what I want to share. Thank you so much.
And Dago, we are so grateful for you as well. In fact, you were with me last night when I was trying to go to sleep, and your voice came into my mind. Oh, and it was, everything is for me. Everything is for me. I'm going to start writing down your sayings and create a book of Indigoisms, because they're so wise and they're so helpful. So I want to thank you for bringing us back into the sense and the feeling of what all of these meetings are all about, which is everything is always for us. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. It's 11 o'clock, and we have another meeting in what, an hour, Cindy? So I want to thank you for being here, everyone, and for doing these lessons together. I love
Mwah.
us. Love us. Thank you. See you next week, same time.